It's time for Big or Small, Measure It All, making measurements from Earth to deep space. Have you ever thought about how important measurements are? From the clothes you wear to the food you eat, the car you drive, even the airplane you fly, someone somewhere has measured something to make sure everything works. This series is an exciting look at how we measure things and why it's important for you to know how. Hi, I'm Dave, and we are going to explore measurements inside out, upside down, and sometimes sideways. Why? Well, for everything needing measurements, there's usually more than one thing to measure, like weight, volume, perimeter, angle, and area. And with most things, every one of those measured items interacts with another measured item to make whatever's being measured work the way it's intended. Now, when I think about flying, it's all about strapping myself into the cockpit and heading down a runway in an airplane like this one. But there's another type of flying that doesn't require a runway, wings, or even a propeller. Hot air ballooning. I don't know anybody who doesn't get excited when they see a hot air balloon in the sky. But do you have any idea what it takes to make these things go? We're here at a balloon manufacturer, and we'll visit the biggest hot air balloon event in the country to answer that question. Now, you wouldn't believe the number of things that have to be measured before the pilot fills up the balloon with hot air to make it fly. Here at Firefly Balloons, a hot air balloon manufacturer, the entire process of building a balloon is done by hand, and each step of the process involves taking exact measurements. It starts with computer-aided design, continues through sewing the balloon, which is called the envelope, weaving the basket, lashing the ropes, and even assembling the burner. All through the factory, standard and some not-so-standard measuring devices are the most important tools the balloon makers use.
And how I try to explain to people what a cubic foot is, 1 cubic foot is the same size as a normal basketball. So on this particular balloon, it's 280,000 cubic feet. So that means there's 280,000 basketballs inside there.
Right.
So that puts it in perspective for people to understand what's going on. And our average size balloon we build is 90,000 cubic feet. So there again, it's 90,000 basketballs.
Okay. What
they're doing here is they're getting ready to cut a valve for the top of the balloon, and that's the balloon part that goes in and out. And what they're doing is find the marks with metric measurements, and there's different angles that you'll find for the different pieces on how it cuts to go in. It's like a piece of a pie. When you put it all together, it makes a full circle.
So they have to know the angle of the cut as well as the length of the cut.
Right.
Okay.
And then what these wires will do is they'll heat cut the fabric so that it will not ravel.
So rather than cutting it with a pair of scissors, this actually melts the fabric and then
sure does.
Seals it up.
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing we do is sew. So how do we know how much thread we're using when we're sewing a balloon together?
Well, the thread is measured by pounds, and a normal balloon is probably going to run 10 pounds of thread to the balloon. And if you actually got down, you could actually count the stitches, but that would be pretty hard to do, I guess.
So that'd be a lot of... Take a while to count all that.
Yeah.
And then we're also using these, what are these white strips called?
That's white is a reinforcement of webbing that we're putting on this. And this is actually the bottom part of the balloon, which is a skirt. And that one webbing strip that's a ½ inch wide is 160 centimeters.
I am standing 70 feet away from you, but the rope is twice as long as that. So we're talking about 140 feet of rope for one 280,000 cubic foot or 280,000 basketball balloon. Now that's a lot of rope, and there are 36 of these on one of these giant balloons. All right, so show me what you're doing here.
Okay, I'm cranking 3 of them down at a time, putting a consistent weight on them. The 50 pounds per rope, so I'm going to crank this up to 150 pounds.
So what is the reason for cranking in the weight?
To keep the weight consistently. The rope, when it comes in, they all got so much stretchability to them.
Okay.
So we push them out, pull them out to the max so they get evenly when they're distributed in the balloon.
Okay.
You don't have one pulling opposite side of the other.
Right, you can end up with different lengths of cord if you're not doing this to it. Okay.
Yes, and then they put too much stress on the balloon, which causes tear.
Okay. And tearing in a balloon is a bad thing.
Yes.
So all this fabric must be one big envelope.
Right. This particular balloon is like 105,000 basketballs. So it's a 105, what we call it.
Okay.
So it's roughly 60 feet tall, 5 stories tall. And this is one complete balloon.
So, we know that everything on the balloon gets measured here at the factory. We learned that most of these are measured by length or linear measurements. Now, flying one involves a whole lot of other measurements like weight, volume, air pressure, distance, and altitude.
Well, we paddle flight first by calling flight service, and they give us measurements of the speed of the wind, how fast it's going, what direction it's coming from, the ambient air temperature, again another measurement, and what kind of warmth we're looking at. We look at things, how much fuel we have on board, because we burn gallons of propane, give us an idea how fast the wind is going, so we have a pretty good idea of where we're going. Direction of the wind, the speed, give us about how far we're going to go. Typically in Albuquerque, it's only 2 or 3 miles is about all we're going to fly in a morning. This morning's a little breezier, they may go 5 miles. With a balloon, because we have no propulsion, there's no left turns, no right turns. We only go the speed and the direction of the wind. If you watch this morning, for instance, the balloon's coming close to the ground. We're pretty much going to the south. As it climbed up just a few hundred feet, they started swinging around more to the east.
When I'm planning to fly a plane, I have to do a weight and balance. Do you have to do something like that with this?
We absolutely have to do weight and balance. Balloons, as you noticed in watching this morning, the envelopes are different sizes. The larger they are, the more weight they can carry. The smaller they are, the less. We also have another measurement we have to look at is the envelopes are designed for maximum operating temperatures inside. The higher we can run the temperature, the more weight we can pick up. So we have to make sure we do not overload the basket, okay? And then we want to stay within a certain operating limit of the envelopes. For instance, most of the balloons out here operate from 250 degrees Fahrenheit continuous temperature to a maximum of 300 degrees Fahrenheit maximum continuous. The other thing we want to look at is you watch people maneuvering here. We have these rules with Fiesta. It says you can only maneuver a maximum of 200 feet per minute up or 200 feet per minute down. So you have to learn control. They are measured in terms of volume, cubic feet. About the smallest balloons you will see are people that are flying. You may have seen somebody looks like they're hanging on a swing going by. That balloon typically is about 30,000 cubic feet in volume. The majority of the sport balloons out here are about 90,000 cubic feet in volume. The very large ones where you see the great big baskets have 12, 14 passengers are typically 250 to 300,000 cubic feet displacement. We also take a look at that and say, well, that's cubic feet. A standard balloon out here, the 90,000 cubic foot balloon, is 57 feet in diameter, about 81 or 82 feet tall. But it's 57 feet at the very equator of the balloon.
Okay.
Okay?
Hey, if you want to figure out the volume of a hot air balloon, the closest shape is a sphere. The formula for figuring that out is you multiply 4/3 times pi times the radius cubed.
A standard balloon with a sport balloon basket like you were watching this morning, the basket will weigh about 120 pounds.
That's not as much as I thought it would.
No, but if we take a look at the weight, we look at the weight of the envelope, the balloon itself, the burners, the basket, the fuel tanks full of fuel. Typically a 90,000 cubic foot balloon will weigh around 650 pounds ready to go. They will lift anywhere from 1,700 to about 1,900 pounds. So you have somewhere 1,200 to around 1,200 pounds of maximum lift.
Now, even though I know how to fly an airplane, they won't let me fly a balloon because I'm not a balloon pilot. Now, balloons are registered, inspected, and maintained like any other aircraft, and pilots need to pass a balloon flight test. After carefully measuring every centimeter of the balloon built at the factory and watching the pressure gauges on the propane tanks while filling the envelopes with the proper volume of hot air, the morning sky over Albuquerque, New Mexico is magically filled with more than 700 balloons. Flying any aircraft requires paying close attention to measurements. For a balloon pilot, it means knowing the volume of hot air it takes to lift the weight of the basket full of passengers. For an airplane pilot, that means knowing the length of the runway, the direction of the wind, your speed at takeoff, and an awareness of altitude. Without exact measurements, neither aircraft is going to fly.